Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Cynthia Sue Larson, MBA. I'm just going to call her Cindy. That's what I've called her most of her life. So Cindy and I actually are like distantly related, but anyway, so we're good friends. And Cindy is the best-selling author of Quantum Jumps. I've actually got a copy of Quantum Jumps. And High Energy Money. She also has Aura Healing Meditations as a CD that you can get.
Yes.
These are all available on Amazon.com. Cindy is a life coach. She has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley. She worked for many years as a project manager at Citibank. She has been interviewed on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and BBC. And her website is www.realityshifters.com. I can also share with you, in addition, that Cindy has a second degree black belt in Kuk Sol, which is a Korean martial art. And so we'll sort of get into this, a little bit of how it relates to our topic, but we're going to be talking about how to manage emotions in financial decisions.
Right.
So, Cindy, thanks again for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a
I'm-
pleasure to be on the show.
That's great. So, a recent survey conducted by the American Psychological Association indicates as many as 8 in 10 Americans report feeling stressed about money concerns. It doesn't seem so surprising, especially if you think about what we've been going through for the last few years since 2008. We're still in recovery mode. Is there something that people can be doing to better manage stress?
Yes. Well, stress is one of the top concerns lately for a lot of people. And as you mentioned, it's often related to finances. In fact, I've got some research that comes from the American Psychological Association. If we could show slide number 1, just to give people an idea of how serious an issue this is. The amount of stress people are feeling right now, if you look at this slide, is much higher than what they consider to be healthy. So if you're feeling stressed, it's not just you, is basically what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's pretty substantial. But there is something we can do about it.
Okay.
And what we can do about it is rather simple. It may seem surprisingly simple, but it's meditation, and specifically mindfulness meditation, which is correlated and connected in some ways with what people call emotional intelligence. So it's becoming aware, focusing one's attention.
Okay, we'll get into some of the details about that, I'm sure, as we go along. Did you want to maybe talk a little bit about things on your slide too, or did you want to save
Yeah,
that
let's
for-
talk about that too. There's one more slide. Let's take a look. Slide number 2, just to give people a sense of really the scope of the problem. This slide shows that money is number 1 as the most stressful source of stress that was reported to the American Psychological Association. This is a survey that was conducted in 2012. And work came in second. Money was 69% of the respondents saying that that was a big issue. Money, finances, things like that.
Mhm.
Work came next, then the economy, then things like family responsibilities and relationships, and then health much farther down. So surprisingly, with that much stress, you'd think people would be concerned about their health. And interestingly, there is a correlation, because when people feel stress, there was a study conducted by Harvard that showed most of the hospital visits were due to stress. Something like 78% of the people that are being admitted to hospitals.
Yeah. Stress creates a situation in our bodies that can result in illness.
Right.
And so, in a sense, you could say all of these things are related because of many of our relationship difficulties relate to money.
Right.
And but when you look at your first three, money, work, and the economy, I mean, really, those are all sort of money related anyway.
They are.
Okay. Time magazine recently featured meditation with a cover story, The Mindful Revolution, the science of finding focus in a stressed out multitasking culture. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this mindful revolution.
Right. Well, the idea of mindfulness, if you're wondering what is that, it's the process of focusing one's mind and being aware, monitoring what's happening. And so it's really about being engaged in the present moment. And most of us may think we are, but it's surprising how often our minds wander. And you can pay attention when you're driving somewhere, for example, and you don't know how you got there. Or like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
That's not a good sign. But unfortunately, people's minds tend to wander about half the time. There have been studies done to show that often when people are just checked on throughout the course of a day, if they're in a study to track this sort of thing, half the time that they're being checked on, their mind is actually wandering. When people's minds wander, it's connected with pain and sort of dwelling on negative things. So mindfulness is becoming much more in the mainstream, and especially as some of these brain studies are being conducted. So we've got more and more tools to show, here's what's happening inside someone's mind. You can get the scans to show what's happening and notice that changes occur when people do meditate in a good way.
Yeah. So I'm going to go a little bit off our script here for a moment, Cindy. How did you get involved in this area of meditation?
In this area of meditation?
Well, maybe I should say in the area of meditation in general. So.
In general? Well, it helped a lot that I've been practicing martial arts, Kuk Sool Won specifically, since 1999. That really has made a huge difference for me. And meditation is part of what we do. So I think that's true of a lot of the old school styles of martial arts. So that was just something that was part of my weekly routine, and I made it more and more so. So it made it easier for me to go through challenging life events, such as divorce, and actually I almost had a bout with depression, which I feel was alleviated tremendously through meditation.
Yeah. So I'm also, or have been involved in martial arts for many years, as you know.
Yes.
And so I feel that this was a life skill that was taught. It's not a difficult life skill, particularly for children. This is something that can help them to do better in school.
Yes.
So, for example, we talk about stress. So you're getting ready for a test, okay? And so if you're stressed, you may find that you can't even you can't even read that thing that's on the page in order to deal with a question
Right.
very well. And so, we used to teach a very simple little meditation technique when you started a class. Probably you did something similar in your school. So you just breathe in, hold it for a few moments, and then you breathe out. Some people say that they do a visualization exercise with that. Well, in comes the good air, in comes the good air, out goes the bad, whatever. And so that's the old way of saying it in a sense. But you were talking about emotional intelligence. I was reading a book called Emotional Intelligence, and so the person was talking about that many times when we're reacting to a situation, that we will flip into, I guess you would say, sort of a negative emotional state.
Right.
And it's a part of our brain, I believe it's called the amygdala, that becomes active. I feel it click. And I'm not very pleasant to be around when I'm in that state. Right. But anyway, but so this is a little bit why they used to say count to 10.
Yes.
Okay, when you're responding to a negative situation, because you want to not be into that automatic mode that of maybe responding in a negative way, maybe in an aggressive way or whatever. And so it may surprise people to know, in martial arts, I mean, it's supposed to be self-controlled.
It is self-controlled. And
Yeah.
it also, for me, it took me from being the actor that was like the main starring role in my life to being more of the writer behind the scenes, the one who's aware that there's a whole lot going on, and the observer, the awareness, the one who's watching. And so rather than feeling like I'm the one who's all upset and I'm scared, I could feel that I'm the one observing.
Right.
So it's a big, you're right.
So, and before I move on, there is a book related to this, related to martial arts. I believe the fellow's name was Joe Hyams, but Hyams is definitely his last name, Hyams. He wrote a book called Zen and the Martial Arts, and he talked about an experience that he had. He was traveling, I'm trying to remember his wife's name. Actually, he was married to a celebrity, a woman, beautiful woman. And anyway, but they were traveling in Europe, and something happened where basically he had something that happened like in his chest where he was in really intense pain. And so basically what he said is, I just went into the mode of, this meditative breathing to basically keep control of his physiology, if you will, while they were traveling. And it didn't get him out of pain, but it helped him to sort of get through it till they got to a doctor. They said there was a good chance that he probably would have died if he had not done this exercise.
Yeah.
So, folks, this is something that's very valuable, very simple. And here's something else that I guess I'll point out. You can tell I have some strong feelings about this myself.
I'm glad you do.
And when I have been doing some public speaking, a lot of times there's an issue that your audience is fidgeting or talking or what have you.
Right.
So what I will do is I will say, will you all please play a game with me for a moment? And I'm going to teach you a life skill. And so I just have them do the breathing exercise. I just have them breathe in and out like 5 times, and I have total attention.
Right.
So we talk about attention, from your physiology as far as, a stance and so forth that we do. But there's also the attention of being in the moment, of doing these meditative exercises.
That's
so, okay, so with that, let's move on. The Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl 2014 win
Yes.
was attributed in part to mindfulness meditation.
Absolutely.
I don't know if the people on the other team would agree, but offensive tackle, they just played a really great game.
Yes.
Offensive tackle Russell Okung was quoted by ESPN as saying, meditation is as important as lifting weights and being out there on the field for practice. So maybe you'd like to comment about this and how it might apply to non-athletes.
Right. Well, what's amazing for me personally is I don't usually follow football, but I happened to have been in Seattle during my book tour in November. And I was on a bus full of actually mayors from different cities. There was a conference going on. One of the mayors jumped off our bus that was on the way back to the airport to snap photos of someone getting onto another bus. And I didn't know what was going on. I said, "What's all this?" And they said, "These are the Seattle Seahawks." And they were very much on people's mind at that time. And,
Sure.
and what ESPN was saying is that I feel it's really important because the meditation that the players were doing every day, practicing what you said, breathing, focusing their awareness on the breath, very simple mindfulness practices, enabled the players to do what a lot of people are noticing the benefits of meditation to confer, which is to be much faster to respond to things, much more relaxed, much more aware of working together as a group. So it was one of many things. Obviously, they were doing yoga, they were eating very healthy diet and so forth. But this was definitely credited with being, like you said, something just as important as exercising your muscles. And it's keeping your mind from wandering. And this is something that some of the coaches now are asking players when they start working with them, to think about their biggest successes and failures. And we can do that financially too. And if you think, okay, financially, when you think about your biggest successes and failures and decisions, what went into that? Was it something that you did, or was it something having more to do with the mindset? most people say it is the mindset. And when you think about the mindset, how can you improve that? That would definitely be through mindfulness meditation.
All right.
So it's a powerful tool.
So maybe I'll throw out another little thing here, because now you've sort of brought something to my mind again. And that is, so again, I mean, we go through, all of us have these moments. We have down moments, we have, let's just say, blunders that we make, and
Yeah.
we want to kick ourselves.
Right.
And so a technique or a way to deal with this is I guess you could call it the 5-minute wallow. So in other words, you say, okay, well, I'm only going to, I am going to deal with this. I am going to, if you will, mourn over this or whatever.
Right.
And so, but I'm going to give myself X amount of time. In other words, so 5 minutes, I will be excited and enthusiastic, is what Ziegler used to put it. But anyway, after, I go through this misery that I have to put myself through. So anyway, so you can give yourself permission, if you will, to kick yourself a little bit, but then,
Right.
have to be able to put these things behind you. Again, maybe you go through this meditation exercise after you've been through your 5-minute wallow. So now, okay, I'm centered again. I can focus on what I need to do and
Right.
move on.
Because that working area, that whiteboard in your mind is really important, and a lot of people clutter it up. So
Yeah.
just recognizing, okay, I'll fill it with the junk, and I'll just wipe it clean. That's good.
Okay.
And you're able to keep it clean when you've been practicing meditation.
Okay. According to an article in last week's Financial Post, Google's most popular internal course for employees, and it has a 6-month waiting list, is Search Inside Yourself. What's this class teaching that Google employees, who are mostly engineers, are so excited about learning?
Well, it is about emotional intelligence and has a lot to do with meditation, actually. And so I was curious about this myself. I thought, what's going on here? And I love the title, Search Inside Yourself. Very clever. But as it turns out, emotional intelligence is one of the top predictors of financial success and happiness. So what the emotional intelligence is all about is noticing how are you feeling and what's going on for you and what's going on for other people. Being able to differentiate yourself from others and be able to be mindful about it, focused on it, be aware of these things. And a lot of managers are not necessarily people, they're more task people or, focusing on things. So it may be challenging to really learn how do people react emotionally. So it gives people that sense of first observing yourself and being in that mindful state. So there's a couple of aspects to this. One part is focusing your mind, like on your breathing. And then another part is just being in that very open state where you can recognize things coming and going. Thoughts might come, but they can go too. And so it's one part of the practice is very focused and the other part is very expansive. So it's monitoring.
And so part of emotional intelligence, I think that we're saying, is one, being aware of your own emotional state, but another is to sort of be sensitive to others'
Right.
emotional things and what they're dealing with and where they are. This is very sobering stuff when I'm dealing with my grandchildren, and to see how they respond when sometimes Grandpa is not quite on the same wavelength as how Mom and Dad work.
It's good for them to learn everybody's different too.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what changes come about when people get involved with meditation.
Oh, good. Yes, there's some big physiological changes that do occur. So some people might think, well, this all just sounds great, but how do you know it's working? How do we have any proof or evidence that this makes a difference? And what's exciting about all the brain studies that are going on right now is we can see evidence of actual increase in the gray cells, the brain cells, especially in the hippocampus. And there are changes in the way the amygdala is fired up or not fired, so the pathways change. And even things like telomeres change, which are associated with longevity. So there's short-term reduction in the stress, the cortisol, long-term improvement in all sorts of things, including reduction in pain, just amazing studies. If I start listing everything that meditation does, it almost sounds unreal. Like that one thing can't possibly be doing all that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty amazing, and there's more and more evidence all the time.
So it's not just woo-woo stuff that we're talking about here. And really, like we said, I mean, yes, there's a transcendental meditation movement, as we know, for many years, and which is fine. But the things, you can get into this in a very simple way, and it doesn't have to be esoteric or complicated.
Right.
Okay. Wharton School of Business recently in the news, conducting a study to investigate the effects of meditation on financial decision making. This is a financial show.
Yes, it is.
What were they looking for? What did they find out?
Okay, well, what they were looking for was to find out, with an example of a sunk cost problem, which hopefully your viewers know what this is all about, but if not, it was basically a simple scenario. Each of those study participants were first either given a mindfulness meditation where they practiced focusing on their breathing, or they were encouraged to let their mind absolutely wander, and they kept being reminded, go, feel free, let your mind go further afield, wherever you want to go. And so those two groups then were given the exercise and told that they were playing the role of a person working in a photocopy center. They just started the new business, had spent $200,000 to purchase equipment that fits exactly in their store. 1 week later, then the competitor said they're going out of business and they were just folding shop, but if they wanted to act quickly, you could actually purchase their cutting-edge computerized printing shop system for $10,000, which you have. You exactly have $10,000 to spend, but you can't recoup any of the expenditure on what you've already purchased. The $200,000, yeah, it's sunk. It's a sunk cost.
Right.
However, the new equipment is twice as fast and it's twice as efficient. So people that meditated were able to make a clear decision without getting all confused about the emotion associated with the sunk cost. They could clearly see, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And so actually, let's see slide number 3. Slide number 3 is just a picture. This is showing you what it feels like to focus on mindfulness and look at the flowers instead of the garbage behind you. And now we'll go to slide 4. And here's the results. So if you look at this bar chart, you'll see that in the Wharton study, the participants who did the mindfulness meditation were not tricked by this sunk cost scenario. They actually made a good decision. The control group whose mind wandered had a much tougher time resisting the sunk cost bias. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
It's pretty exciting, I think. Because I want to point out, this was a meditation that just takes 15 minutes and it can make a huge difference.
Yeah. It doesn't even take 15 minutes.
No.
Yeah, so it can take 1 or 2 minutes or less. So, like this little exercise that I was mentioning, it doesn't take long at all. And the idea is you leave whatever's going on outside.
Right.
And now we're focusing on what the heck's going on in here, so that you're not going to get whacked because your mind is somewhere else.
And this brain training pays off, because then you don't have emotions that lead you around. I thought that Wharton study was interesting. I didn't want to go into too much detail, but they also looked at people who focused on the future, and they would make bad decisions too. So mindfulness of being in the present moment is absolutely the best course of action.
Okay. Well, if meditation is so effective at managing emotions, why aren't more people doing it?
Well, often misperceptions. They might think it's too complicated. I don't have time. So I love the fact that you've had experience too. It doesn't take that long, and people trust you. So it's something that you can absolutely do just in, like you said, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And it's something that's pretty easy to learn. And I love the description that you're saying of just focus on your breathing, because that's one of the easiest, simplest ways to do it. And you're always breathing, hopefully, as long as you're alive.
You better be. Otherwise, you're really in trouble.
And this is a great thing to do before you make a financial decision.
Okay. So what are some good ways for somebody to get started with meditation?
Well, I believe in letting people find what works for them. So there's a lot of jokes about people saying Om and chanting and sitting cross-legged, and that works for a lot of people. But it's possible to combine whatever is your favorite focus of meditation with a relaxing activity. In other words, take a walking meditation, or wake up in the morning and pay attention to your breathing and just get calm and focused. Even if you have a busy day, that 1 minute is going to make all the difference. So.
How about this? Rather, as much as get at the beginning of the day, how about when you're trying to go to sleep and you got all those things buzzing around in your head?
Perfect time again. That's actually
from the day.
Those are my favorite 2 times to meditate.
Yes.
Is right when I wake up, right when I fall asleep.
So you want to have a good start and you have a good finish.
Yes.
But again, you can. I mean, it can really help you to go to sleep.
Yes.
To practice this, and maybe, but you may have to get up and set up and do it. But anyway. It can be very helpful, and if nothing else, you'll get some rest if you don't get to sleep immediately.
That's right.
Okay, well, Cindy, we're basically out of time. I want to thank you again for joining me as my guest today, and for coming here from Berkeley. And folks, I remind you again about her book, High Energy Money. Again, you can get that at Amazon.com. Cynthia Sue Larson, you can look up. She's actually got a ton of books that she's written. And anyway, hope we've given you some things to think about here, some meditate upon. We'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.